guys and welcome to today's video. Today is the first episode of a new series that I want to try out on my channel called Foundation Nation. Foundation Nation, 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 Nation. So Foundation Nation is a little concept that I gained inspiration from the Taylor, who does a lot of foundation reviews. She's an American YouTuber. She does 15 days of foundation where she donates to a women's shelter. It's like a Project Beauty Share sort of thing, and she kind of tests foundations, and I love those videos that she does. So full credit to her, kind of from where the main inspiration from this has come from. But I also love foundations very, very much, and I have dry skin and I live in the UK, so possibly have access to different brands and different weather, certainly. So in these videos I'll be testing a foundation for a full week, and I'll be testing for things like the longevity, what it looks like with or without a primer, what it looks like with just moisturiser, with a brush or with a sponge, how products layer on top of it and in different lightings. So I really wanted to make sure I've tested everything for this foundation and every foundation going forward to really give a proper good review. I love foundation reviews, and I particularly like them when they're really informative. I don't know about you, but I can try one foundation one day, love it, and the next day I hate it, and vice versa. So I wanted to make sure that I was testing a foundation for a full week and trying to make it work, you know, doing things that I probably wouldn't necessarily do off the get-go, and really try to find the real harmonious sort of thing that makes the foundation work. So the foundation I'm going to use to kick off this entire series is the Maybelline Dream Urban Cover Foundation. Now this is like a relatively new foundation. I think it's been about a month since it was released, about that. I've got mine in the shade 100 Warm Ivory, and I can tell you right now this is far paler than I thought it was going to be. I've currently got it on my face right now, and I'll always have the foundation that I wear in every single episode, so you can see what it looks like kind of with not a lot of makeup on. I kind of just got a bit of bronzer and a bit of mascara, and like not too much going on. I don't want to wear a highlighter to sort of deflect from what the foundation truly looks like. So this is what it looks like. It's a little bit pale. It matches my neck. My neck is like the palest part of my entire body, like my chest and neck just awfully pale. So this is a little bit paler than I'd prefer to go to. I'd like it just a hair darker, but the undertone is right, so I can make it work with a bit of bronzer and a bit of blush, which is obviously what I've tried to do, but you can tell it's a little bit pale from what I usually go with. The price of this is £10.99 or £11. I haven't done an extensive research on everywhere where you can get it, but in Boots and Superdrug, which are the main shops I'm going to kind of go by when it's drugstore, it's £10.99, so it's a fair price. The packaging itself is quite nice. It looks quite sleek with the pink top and then going into the shade, and then the screw top bottom, which has just got a squeezy tube sort of applicator. And I can say it's actually really nice squeezing out, because you can really sort of like you can apply it to your face, like squeeze it on your face, or you can control how much you want to do either on the back of your hand or on a palette, which is what I use for these sorts of videos. So I actually really like the packaging. The one thing I don't like and I didn't appreciate when I bought it, because there was no testers when I bought this, because I kind of just bought it a bit blind, but I thought this was the shade, but it's truly not. So this isn't transparent right here. This is a shade that they kind of just matched to the foundation. And I found this out because if you look at like the rim here, this bit is sort of semi-transparent, so it's don't buy it on the basis of just looking at this like I did, because actually it's not the same shade. This looks a hair darker, like the sort of shade I'd preferably like to go to. This is a little bit paler, so I'd recommend trying the testers, because yeah, it's just painted inside. I'd say the shade range for this is pretty fair. It's not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. It comes in 20 different shades. I'll try to pop up right here for you the shade range. Like I said, it's not the best, but it's not the worst. It can definitely be improved on. The claims that this foundation has that it's suitable for normal to dry skin and full coverage, with a lightweight feel, a natural looking finish. It's got anti-pollution sort of remedies inside of it. It's SPF 50 and doesn't clog pores. Now I can tell you straight off the bat that a lot of those claims I didn't find true. A lot of people do compare this to the IT Cosmetics CC cream, BB cream. I can also tell you that I would not dupe this to that whatsoever. I 100% prefer the IT Cosmetics CC cream over this, and I can already tell you that this wasn't a great experience. So going on to application, I want to make sure this is fair for every foundation, so I'll be using the same tools in every video as much as I can. So I'll be using the Real Techniques Beauty Blender sponge thing. This is dirty because I've just used it, and I'll always make sure these are clean for when I go to different foundations. And I'll be using the Real Techniques 200 foundation buffing brush. I love both these tools. I know they work for other foundations. So I can kind of rely on these, and again, these will be clean before I try these foundations, so I know that no other foundation is getting mixed in with it. So when I applied the foundation on with the brush, I definitely found that it could have been a little bit streaky at times. This isn't really a problem, you can really buff this foundation out, but I didn't find it the most full of coverage, especially for that claim of full coverage foundation. I wouldn't have said it's the most full coverage foundation I've ever applied on my skin. You can definitely build up the coverage with this one, and with a brush it's not bad, but I did find that this sort of, it looked a little bit patchy when I applied it with the brush. It didn't look as seamless, and I got to the point where I couldn't really buff it out anymore, so the brush wasn't really my favourite way of applying this foundation. Going onto the sponge, I did find that it clung to dry patches a lot, but the finish just looked so much better because it was more of an even coverage. I'd say for this foundation you'd need 2 layers to really make it seamless, and that's currently what I've got on my skin now, is 2 layers of the foundation. I found that just 1 layer, even with sponge and brush, it just didn't look great, so I definitely recommend 2 layers to really sort of make everything seamless and even. And then going on to moisturiser and primer, I always hydrate my face. I am a dry skinned person, so I will always hydrate my face no matter what. My favourite moisturiser at the moment is the Nip and Fab Soften Kale Fix Moisturiser. This is kind of a drugstore price, I think it's about £15. And then my favourite primer is the MUA Pro Base Banana Blur Primer. It's got a mattifying finish with vitamin E. I don't actually think this has got a mattifying finish at all, so I would highly ignore that part of it, but what it does is it does smooth and just kind of hydrate the skin and give a bit of tackiness. So for me, this is like the best primer to really test a foundation, because all it's doing is enhancing the skin rather than changing anything about the foundation. So throughout the series I'm going to try and use these as much as I possibly can. I've got backups of both when I run out. So yeah, these do pair nicely. I have tried them with other foundations, and so far with every foundation I've tried and I know works, this sort of pairing has worked absolutely fine. So if any foundation goes against these, I kind of know that it's the foundation and nothing that affects this. So obviously I applied moisturiser to the entirety of my face and let that sink in, but then I wanted to apply just the primer on one side of my face. And like I said, this primer really smooths everything out and kind of smooths over dry patches, so the foundation didn't cling to those so much, and I could really build the foundation up and give a seamless finish. So I would definitely recommend the primer over just moisturising your face, because this foundation kind of needs working. So obviously application is pretty off the bat. You can kind of see what you do and don't like. You can kind of straight away off of first impressions see if a brush or a sponge looks better. That doesn't affect how it will look later on, if that makes any sense. So application is, I'd say, pretty quick to know what you do and do not prefer. But obviously with a primer versus a moisturiser, you do need to wear the foundation for a bit longer than initial impressions to see what it will look like through the day. So now I'm going to run the clip of my check-in of the foundation with just moisturiser. So I'm just in my car and looking in my mirror. It just tells you the whole truth, doesn't it, the car mirror? And I don't know if you can see that. It's just looking generally cakey and it's all worn off around my nose. Here, not looking great. Settling into smile lines here. And settling into my frown lines. Look how cakey this all looks. Like, it just looks so makeup-y and I don't like that at all. Especially around my nose. And all here, look. It just doesn't look very nice. I mean, this is no primer. This is just moisturiser and just, I've got like a cooling moisturiser stick, and usually that's fine. But it's just looking a little bit makeup-y and I'm not loving it. So I'll try it again with primer like I do. But so far, it's not my fave on first impressions. And then next is the clip of my check-in of the foundation with the primer. Okay, so this foundation has been on now for about 9 hours, so it's looking good as like far back. I'd say it looks quite nice. It does look makeup-y. This isn't a foundation that's going to look really smooth and look like your natural skin. It's not going to make your skin... It's not like a full coverage to the point where it makes your skin look better. It just looks like you've evened out your skin tone with a foundation. Like, it looks like I'm wearing a foundation. I'd say on camera it actually looks better than in person. Hopefully the light stops bouncing around, but around my nose, I don't know if you can tell, like right here, look, it just doesn't look great. Like, it's all worn off and it transfers like it's its job. Like, it really does transfer a lot. So this isn't like a non-transfer proof foundation. It's all broken up around my chin. Like, all here, it's all broken up. Like here, I've literally just taken off the foundation now. My forehead doesn't look terrible, but I think that's just because like the heating's been on and I've been in a sweater and I'm like literally sweating in the corner of my room, just like trying to revise with a hot like laptop. So I think with oily skin, this might look better than dry skin, but then I feel like it's slip and slide everywhere. So I feel like it's not really good for either. I'm not sure. It's not the worst foundation, but it's just seriously not the best. It's like evened out my skin tone, but then it looks a little bit makeup-y. I don't know if I'd want to go to the trouble of having to put on a primer and sort of set it without setting it too much with powder before it looks too cakey, and then worry about trying to build up the coverage without putting on too much, because if you put on too much it looks cakey. It's just not my favourite. It's just not my favourite. So this is the 9-hour check-in. It's not horrific. It looks much, much better with a primer, but it's still slipping and sliding about, and it still looks a bit cakey, so, and it's breaking apart. And at the end of each day, kind of like before I went to bed, I'd always just make some notes on a bit of scrap paper by my bedside, just about how I felt about the foundation, things that I picked up from it, things that I kind of noticed and I thought I should tell you. And I kind of just summed it up in my notepad of good and bad things, and things I just think are worth a mention. Of course, do not forget that I have got dry skin. It's not severely dry, it's just kind of like lacks hydration, and it's just generally dry. So if you've got oily skin and you feel like some of these things I'm saying suit your skin tone, I'm not saying necessarily it's bad or good for you, I'm saying it's bad or good for me, if that makes any sense. So for the good things, I think it's a decent price, it's very affordable, it's got a decent shade range. Again, it's not the best. I'd say it's 2019, people are picking it up now with their shade ranges, so it's not the best, but it's a new product, and I could totally see a brand like Maybelline, you know, if it's popular, they may expand on the shade range. I can totally see them doing it, but it's not a bad start. 20 shades, I'd say 20 to 30 shades is not a bad start. When this foundation has got a primer and it's worked into the skin, it can actually have quite a nice finish, and on camera I definitely noticed the foundation looks nicer on camera than kind of in real person. And this does last a pretty good amount of time. It does fade rather than patch, which I do honestly prefer. I hate it when you can see like my foundation just slowly wearing off from the bottom up and from the top down, and patching and kind of like oxidized patches all over my face. I completely hate that so much. And that is another thing, this foundation does not oxidize, which it might be a bad thing in the sense of if you can't find your shade, then it's this or nothing, but it doesn't oxidize. So if you do find your shade, it will be your shade. This has not changed from when I put it on. So onto the bad things. Without a primer, this looks really dry, cakey, and clings to every dry patch I have on my skin. It does move around quite a lot, so it looks streaky with a brush, but I wouldn't say that lasts necessarily, so I wouldn't worry about that. But this foundation does transfer and it does move about on the face quite a lot. I personally do not like that. I hate when a foundation, if you know, I'd hate to feel something touch my face and think, oh no, my foundation's just left it. I hate that feeling. Even now, if I just run my hands like this, you can see the foundation. I don't know if you can see it on my fingers, if the camera's going to pick it up. Can you just about see like the comparison of my fingers up here to the ones here? It's just, the foundation comes off just by pressing on the face, and that's just not my favourite thing, to be honest. I just want my foundation to stay there once it's been put on, and during the day I don't want to feel like my foundation's transferring to anything. So yeah, I think that's why it fades rather than patches, because the foundation is so slippy that it does transfer everywhere. So maybe that's why it sort of fades, because it's slowly coming off onto everything I own. I'm not quite sure, I just don't like it. And the last main negative for me is that this foundation does settle into fine lines. A lot of foundations for me settle into my frown lines. I have quite deep set frown lines, but I know a foundation settles into fine lines when I see it on my smile lines here. I'm saying lines a lot, lines. It settled in around my mouth, and I just don't like that at all. Another thing is that this foundation does sit on top of the skin rather than melting in. This one just sits there, so if it's transferring off or you're putting something on top, it's just going to sit on the skin. I personally don't like that. I like it when it all meshes in with my skin and it's all like beautiful for the day, you know? And I'd probably say that this foundation might be better for oily skin, though I'd be very hesitant to recommend it to you if you do have oily skin, simply because it moves about a lot. So even though I'd say it's better for oily in the terms that it won't grip to anything, like this gripped to my dryness so bad, I'd say also that it's very slippy. And I think the slippiness comes from that recommendation of normal to dry skin. I don't know. I don't know if I'd recommend it for dry skin. I don't know if I'd recommend it for oily skin. I just don't know if I'd recommend it overall. You can definitely make it work, like I've made it work here, but if I'm honest, when I'm looking in the mirror, I can see it breaking up in my chin already, and I've worn this foundation now for, what's the time? I've worn this for an hour and a half and it's already breaking up on my chin. It's settling into smile lines a little bit, settling into frown lines a little bit. It's just not my favourite foundation. It's just, I don't feel confident wearing it. It's a sort of foundation that I would use again just to use it up, but I would not purchase it again, and I'll be glad when it's gone. So now we go on to ratings. Now I'll be rating the foundations out of 5 stars. 1 star being bad, don't buy it, I don't recommend it for anyone. 2 being poor, as in like just no, wouldn't really recommend it. You can try it, but I don't think you'll like it. 3 stars will be try it yourself. I don't know how I feel about it. It's not my favourite, it's not the worst. 4 is a solid good. It's a sort of foundation that I would repurchase again because I enjoy it, I'd recommend it to you, and overall I think it's a good foundation. 5 stars out of 5 is an excellent foundation, something that I think you need in your life, something that I can't believe you haven't tried before because it's so incredible. There'll be very few foundations I think will be a 5 or a 1, but I want to try and be fair and consistent with these reviews and really give you my honest opinion and kind of back it up with validity. So yeah, this foundation is, I'd say, I feel really bad, but a 2 out of 5 stars. It's just poor. I don't recommend it. I mean, it's not the worst foundation. I've made it work, but even after making it work, I can see it settling into smile lines and I can see it patching off my chin, which is not oily at all. So, you know, if you've got oily skin, I wouldn't recommend it for that sort of reason. It's just not the best. I'll be glad when it's out of my life, and I wouldn't recommend trying it unless you've got a little bit of extra money and feel like you want to. I wouldn't recommend this foundation, and therefore it's a 2 out of 5 stars. So yeah, that is the end of this video. Please do tell me if you enjoy these and if you've got another foundation that you want me to try and test the rings. Obviously do bear in mind, if you do suggest a foundation, I do try it for an entire week, so it won't be up the next week, it might be up a couple of weeks later. But if you want me to test the foundation, please do put that in the comments and I will try to go out and purchase it, or if I've got it already, do a full review on that, because it's you guys watching it. If you're interested in a foundation, you want to know about it, I'm happy to do it for you. But yeah, apart from that, thank you very much for watching today's video. Subscribe if you haven't already and ring my bell so that way you'll be notified of every video I upload. I upload every single week. And yeah, give me a little thumbs up if you enjoy Foundation Nation. I want to try and make this a thing. I mean, I've bought a lot of foundations, so I'm going to make it a thing for a little while, you know? Thank you guys for watching once again, and I will see you in my next one. Bye! Usually... Ghosting.